Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of Critical Weight Theory, where today we're exploring ways individuals and organizations can function effectively without unnecessary pressure or nonsense from hierarchical dominance. That's right, we're getting a little bit rebellious. Today we're diving into two interconnected themes: organizational models developed by anarchist thinkers and how they can teach us to operate more effectively in our own lives, especially when dealing with oppressive work environments. So, if you've ever felt like your boss is pushing you to the edge, this episode is for you. Or, I suppose, if you are in a boss role or what is called a leadership role and you want to learn how to be more humane or something like that, maybe you can learn a thing or two from this episode as well. So, I guess this could be part one of this episode: the power of self organized systems. So, what exactly is that talking about? So, the basic premise of anarchism isn't just about chaos, it's actually about self governance, autonomy, and mutual aid. Throughout history, anarchists have successfully built systems, at least on a small scale, without a ruler, proving that organizations don't need oppressive leadership to function effectively. So, the aim is basically to have workplaces that are arranged in such a manner. So, why should we learn from the basic premise of anarchism? Because it encourages us to master the art of decentralized decision making and develop cooperative structures and fair power distribution. Concepts that to me seem inherently legitimate, and by implementing some of these strategies, even in flawed environments, we can create workplaces and communities that operate without undue pressure on any one person or, of course, on the entire group. And let's be real, when we talk about undue pressure, we often think about toxic work environments. So that's largely what I'm going to be talking about here. So this is part two of the episode, I guess, dealing with an overbearing boss. We often hear about unruly employees or employees who engage in mischief, but plenty of workplaces have horror stories about bosses being terrible as well. So I saw a question from Quora that really hits home, and I'm going to quote it right here. My boss puts undue pressure on me every time, and I feel like quitting my job, but I can't because of financial constraints. How can I tackle this situation? So, first off, if this sounds like you're not alone. Workplace stress is a huge issue and a very general issue. It's something that is pretty well known, so there's not that much mystique about it, really. And feeling trapped in a job due to financial constraints can be exhausting, and it can leave you feeling powerless and depressed. I know I was working at a place for like 7 years, and the only reason I was there for that long is because I thought I couldn't do any better. I thought, well, once I'm here, what's even the chance that a better place could even hire me? I'm already down this low. No place is going to be interested in me. So it was like a self cycle that I was caught up in. It was self perpetuated cycle, I guess, is one way of phrasing it. But there are ways to handle such a situation effectively, and here's sort of a step by step guide. I can't promise it's going to work perfectly for you, of course. If you're in such a situation, I don't think there are any absolute guarantees that I could make that you'll, you know, get out of your trap. But, here are some basic possibilities. So, first, you're going to want to assess the situation clearly, of course. Identify specific behaviors from your boss that are causing stress or from your general workplace. It could be coworkers. Maybe your boss is actually relatively cool. Maybe you don't even have that many bad experiences in general, but just, a few of them that suddenly, made you start to question where you are in life. So, when it comes to the whole boss thing, you have to wonder, are they overloading you with work, undermining your efforts, micromanaging? So clarity is the key. Of course, this is another possibility. Maybe you're overreacting. Maybe you're too sensitive, maybe you're not adequate for the job. I mean, that's a possibility too, maybe it's just not your strong suit, you're on the wrong career path. Any number of things could be, a factor here. So I don't want to rule that out either. I want to be realistic from a wide variety of perspectives. I don't want to be accused of, not examining a lot of different angles, a lot of different possibilities. So another thing that, should be done generally speaking is that you're going to want to maintain professionalism and composure no matter how unfair the situation feels. Responding with professionalism actually gives you the upper hand. And I know there are some people already who are going to be like, but wait, this workplace sucks. They deserve me lashing out, etc., etc. But if you stay calm and collected and focused on solutions, you're actually going to avoid conflicts in the good way, and you can still find a way out. So I'm not saying you shouldn't have any emotions. Of course, you should have some, but try to sort of navigate your own mental situation, and then you can make a clearer path out of whatever crappy situation your workplace is presenting for you. Another good idea is to document everything. You know, keep a secretive, or no, I don't know why I said secret, but I guess it could be a secret record. But you could keep a record of emails, messages, and interactions, especially those that show discrepancies in how you're treated. A paper trail can be a lifesaver if you ever need to escalate the situation, which may happen. You might need to confront the boogeyman of your workplace, and if you have evidence of whatever you're talking about, it's only going to help. Well, if you're on the wrong side of things, then of course evidence is not going to help you. But if you're on the right side, then evidence will be a good thing. I've talked about before how I was wrongly fired, and you know, I actually had the evidence on my side, and they're lucky I was not a litigious person because I probably could have successfully sued them. And, I'm sure some people in my situation at the time would have done that, but, I didn't have money for a lawyer and all that kind of stuff. And plus, I'm just not much for going to, you know, a trial process. I'm not too keen on that idea if I can avoid it. So, another thing you're going to want to do is to build a support network if possible, connect with like minded colleagues who understand whatever you're going through, even if they can't change the situation. Solidarity can be powerful, and you might want to be reminded that maybe you're not insane. Maybe you're not imagining the whole thing. There are other witnesses, if you were being mistreated in some way, which, again, often enough does happen in a given workplace. There are very few workplaces out there that don't have some bullcrap associated with them. So, this one's obvious, but it needs to be said. You should try to seek alternative paths, whether it's, networking or exploring side gigs. Start planning your exit strategy so you don't feel as trapped in your current situation. Maybe you already have an additional job. Well, you might want to ask if you can get more hours there or something like that. It's it seems like a common sense thing for me to mention here, but a lot of people actually forget to do this very important step. So I don't really feel that bad in emphasizing that yes, you should be seeking alternative employment. Like I said, there was a point in my life where I was stuck at a dead end job, and sure, it was partly my fault, but I just felt trapped there. So I needed something to inspire me to get out of that work environment. And maybe if you have the aforementioned solidarity with a coworker, maybe you could team up and find a new workplace together or something like that. That can happen, and maybe it could be a lifesaver, who knows. So all right, this is like part 3 of the episode. So it's about when your boss is setting you up as a troublemaker. Another thing that can happen at a given workplace. Another core question was asking, how do you manage a situation where a manager is trying to set you up to be seen as a troublemaker? So it's another tough spot to be in, and I do know that this happens. I've seen it with my own two eyes. You know, there's some people, or managers or bosses or whatever you want to call them, who are, they just have something against a worker, and they're trying to treat them like they're more disruptive than they are, or something like that. Like it happened to me once. I did things one way, and I pointed out that I did things differently than how they wanted them done, and I was like, well, the thing you want seems to be arbitrary to me, like they were micromanaging. And I was like, well, what's the big deal if I do this thing just a little bit differently? And they actually brought me into the office and they asked me to define the word arbitrary. Like they didn't even know what the word arbitrary meant. So I had to explain it to them, and then they were like, "Oh, well, that's not arbitrary." Well, it kind of was, because it just was a relatively minor thing that was not going to impact the entire way of the business. It wasn't going to change the business model of the workplace, but they acted like it was a major thing because they saw it as if I was engaging in some huge power struggle just by trying to do things slightly differently, and keep things the way they were being done. So they acted as if, oh, I needed some discipline or whatever. So that happened to me, and it's it was a weird thing to be called into the office over that, because it was such a small detail, but they really just had to crack that whip, so to speak, and try to get me back in line, even though as far as I'm concerned, I wasn't really out of line. It was it was just a very small issue, and you know, it reminds me of at the same workplace that I'm not going to name at the moment, but they at one point, they were trying to give me crap because there's literally nothing for me to do. Like all of my cleaning duties were done. So I started like reading a book for a little bit, because there were no customers, there was no additional work to be done. In fact, if I was to help out coworkers, they would have probably got on my case for distracting them or something like that. So and I had to be in a certain area in case there were some customers who showed up. So I shouldn't have even left anyway. But I got yelled at for like stopping to read a book for a little bit, to just kill some time. Basically, it's this ideology that you have to be working at all times, otherwise, you're wasting company time or whatever, even if there's no work to be done. So that kind of reminds me of the you're a troublemaker thing or you're lazy when in fact there's nothing you need to be doing at the moment. So I think workplaces forget that if there's no work that needs to be done, it's not necessarily a bad thing that the worker did. It might even mean that they're doing their work adequately. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, yeah. But I tried to stay professional and emotionally detached at all times. Of course, I'm not always successful in that, but a good chunk of the time I was. And even when you feel unfairly targeted, resist the urge to react emotionally. I I don't want to I don't want to sound like I'm demonizing people who are highly emotional here, but it's really your best bet to keep your interactions professional and avoid giving either your bosses or coworkers any material to use against you. Because if you're going off the rails, well, what can you do? I mean, that's how they're going to react. They're going to use that against you if they think you're overreacting or whatever. So try to stay calm. And again, there's always a point where you might have to just walk away and say, I quit. You're going to have to, in most circumstances, do a cost benefit analysis, fight or flight, etc. And again, like I said before, create a paper trail if possible, save relevant emails, take notes after conversations, summarize verbal agreements and follow up emails. And another simple tactic is to send a message after meetings to ensure that you have written confirmation of what was discussed. Now, those are things that I didn't do really because I wasn't thinking of these things at the time. But, if you have a job, well, especially in an office setting, you're probably going to have these types of meetings regularly. They act like they're a big team and whatnot. So it's only fair then that you document what the supposed team was talking about, right? And it's not necessarily a devious thing on your part. You're just trying to be a good part of the team by keeping a record, you know. So, the other point I said is to find allies. I kind of hate the word allies, but it's the common one that people know what it means. But just like-minded colleagues, they can serve as witnesses, support you if your claims need verification. If especially if things get out of hand and you need to sort of explain the situation. And so, at a first glance, workplace struggles and these anarchic organizational models may seem unrelated, but when you think about it, both deal with resisting oppressive structures and reclaiming autonomy. In today's world, many people are growing frustrated with top down control, whether in government, corporations, or social environments. So the desire to regain power over our own lives is perhaps stronger than ever, even though society is royally dropping the ball. That doesn't mean you have to drop the ball. You can still try to do your best to assert your own interests. We have to be careful not to fall into nostalgia for outdated solutions. We have to be innovative and we might have to improvise. A lot depends on the quirkiness of the situation that we're in. But at the end of the day, having a general framework to follow is a good idea. So while, you know, historical movements provide valuable lessons, we need to innovate rather than blindly recreate the past. So whether you're navigating a toxic workplace or trying to build a fairer world in general, the principles of autonomy, mutual support, and strategic resistance to bullcrap can help. So if you take one thing away from this episode, let it be this: you have more power than you think. By being intentional in your approach, whether it's documenting mistreatment, standing with like minded people, or seeking alternative paths, you can reclaim control over your own situation and possibly, you know, make the world somewhat better as a result. So, thanks for tuning in. And if you found this episode helpful, share it with someone you feel might need it. And remember that change starts from within, but it grows through collective intelligence. So until next time, stay empowered.